All right, today should be an epic triple rant. So, stupid people. I think let's start with the easiest and dumbest of the lot. This is gonna be dangerous, I have to tell you, especially those people who are flat earthers. Don't do this at home. This is very dangerous for you because it involves a glass of water in which people that are flat earthers can fucking drown because they are that dumb. Also, here's a knife, just a normal, ordinary knife. Again, don't do this at home, flat earthers, because I'm holding it by the blade. You'll probably suicide yourself doing that. So, notice it's perfectly straight, yeah? Notice glass of water. Notice that when I put this perfectly straight knife in the glass of water, you notice there's a deflection, yeah? So you can see, there you go. It looks almost like the knife is split into two, right? And depending on the angle at which you put it, there you go. That looks like the knife is shorter because the light waves, guess what, get bent. That looks like the knife is bent. And why do you think that happens? Because light bends. Light doesn't travel in straight lines. Light gets bent by the medium it travels through, such as water or atmosphere. Now, on a round planet, you have atmosphere. A globe planet has an atmosphere. I'm just getting another little piece of paper so that I can draw a sketch for the tard. So the more of this atmosphere you go through, the more it changes things. So here is a sketch. I've got the board. That's why I've got the board here. Let me use that. There we go. Just move it a bit. So, we've just seen that in a glass of water, yeah, there you go. If you put a straight stick into it, instead of seeing that, what you actually see is more something like this. Or possibly, depending on the angle at which you're looking at it, something like this. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get the point. Or you can get it shortened as I showed you at the beginning. So if I'm facing you with it, yeah, there's the knife outside of the glass. There, you can see how long it is and all that. Now I put it in the glass and it looks shorter, right? Just notice there, I'm putting the top of the glass at the lip of the, there, that point. You'll notice it's on the far edge of the glass for you. And notice where the bottom of the knife looks like it is, right? Now, when I take it out, I put the same thing at the same level, which is at the back here. You can see it looks different, yeah? And again, because I'm angling it there, you can see the break, yeah? You can see that it changed a lot. So that's basically what happens when light travels through a denser medium. So if you've got a planet, oh sorry, wrong pen. If you've got a planet that's got an atmosphere around it, you can see that a light beam that's traveling from, say, here to here, yeah, has got that much atmosphere to go through, and a light beam that's traveling from here to here has got that much light atmosphere to go through, which is obviously denser. So over the distance, what happens is that the light bends gradually. You know, in the glass, you get this effect. Sorry, that's my artistic skills coming into play there. So in the glass, you get a sharp effect because the medium's density changes suddenly. But as the atmosphere increases, your let me just redo this one a little bit. I'm not quite Giotto, none of you will know who that is, but Giotto was an artist that apparently could draw a perfect circle freehand. You'll see I have no relationship to that man on any level. So if you're standing over here and there's something else standing over there, which is theoretically below the straight line horizon, right? So you can't see it. However, because of the atmospheric density, you get a slight curve, because the more atmosphere the light goes through, the more it sort of has to bend. And so the light travels, again, I'm exaggerating it, but it travels a little bit like that. That's not the only thing that bends light. The dense atmosphere or liquid or whatever is just one of the things that bends light. Gravity also bends light, and we know that this is a fact because you get gravity lensing. And again, you can observe gravity lensing, because what happens is when you've got, oh, I better sketch this one too, because otherwise you won't know what the hell I'm trying to explain. Well, some of you won't. So gravity lensing is a phenomenon where you've got, let's say, an object, a star, say, over there. I'll make it a bit bigger so you can see it a bit better. And you've got another object, say, over here. And maybe, let me just think. So that would come like this. And then maybe you've got other objects over here, and you're the observer. You're the observer over here. Now, instead of there being a direct straight line that goes from this point straight to your eyeball, what happens is the light gets, and keep in mind that you've got light coming off this in all directions. But what happens with gravity lensing is some of the light that would have just gone past here gets bent by this object, and some of the light that would have gone past here gets bent by this object, and maybe you've got another bit here, and some of the light that would have gone there gets bent by this object. So what happens is you get at the receiving end, that where your eye is, instead of just getting one ray of light, which is the direct line, you get multiple rays of light, which means that you have more information. You actually get to see that much better than you would if these other objects didn't bend the light going towards it. That looks a bit pornographic, but there you go. You got to learn these things at some point, so you might as well do it now. As you get older and you're able to grasp some of these concepts, it's good for you to understand what looks like a galactic pussy but really is light being bent. So that's just one of the many things that you have to ignore if you're a flat earther. And no, I do not have any truck with those people. They are dumb. I know. I love Owen. Owen's a good guy, but he's just totally dead wrong about the earth being flat or anything of the sort. And if you think that the earth is flat, you are an idiot. Also, there isn't a single verse in the Bible that talks about a flat earth. It just is not there. And the word firmament, for those of you that thinks that the Bible was written in the King James Version by Jesus himself in 1847 or something like that, let me explain. Firmament is the translation of a Hebrew word that all it means is sky. That's pretty much all it means. The expanse is actually the more technically correct word. The expanse. Well, you tell me how an expanse is a fucking dome that you live under, right? No, we don't live in this little snow globe, you fucking morons. And that's enough on the flat earthers. We now move on to the alt-retards. The alt-retards are a special species, and I've found a particularly entertaining one here that I'm going to read a bit of. This guy's name apparently is Eric Danelot, and he's got a Facebook profile, and he looks after or is connected with or is, I can't tell which one, all of the above, the same guy that is also known as Kurt Doolittle. The only reason I came across these morons is because Vox made a blog post about how one of these gammas got ignored by him and so had to tweet about him or something along those lines. Let me read you what this moron, Eric Danelot, says about European civilization and what it consists of. I mean, there's quite a running diatribe there, but I promise you I'm not cherry picking, okay? It's very special. Very special, spelled with a TH. So, listen to this. He's basically saying all sorts of completely idiotic things. And basically what they're saying is that, the reason that European civilization is great is because of truth above everything else, right? Except truth doesn't exist without Christianity. But, it's a little detail we'll get to now. So, in part, this reads, that European civilization consists in the Indo-European language. Which one is that? Which one is the Indo-European language? Because there are multiple languages that have that strain. So, heroic, militaristic, expansionist, paternalistic, sky worshipping. So you've got to worship the sky. Metalworking, entrepreneurial warfare of conquest, using technology, professional warriors, horse and chariot, financed by families, and then profiting from conquest by tripartism. I know, it's gobbledygook, but just hold on. The domestication of human animals from slaves. To free men, to sovereigns under the traditional law of trespass, tort and property. Where every man is sovereign, reciprocity, the means of dispute resolution, restitution demanded in all, but cowardice or adultery, the only capital crimes. So according to this moron, who I'm willing to bet money has not reproduced, thank God, and probably has never felt a naked woman under him ever, the only capital crimes are cowardice and adultery. I guess child abuse is fine, because that's all these little fuckers get up to. It's really special, but wait, it gets even better than that. So let me just pick another choice paragraph. Right. That is the reason for European success in the ancient world and in the modern. Truth before face, regardless of cost, which is something only heroes can bear. Well, I'm gonna come back to that for him. Eric, you fucking moron. Let me ask you a question just in a little while. Europeanism is Europeanism, the cult of sovereignty, non-submission, and responsibility. Really, responsibility. Europeanism is Europeanism, every man equal at the top, so bring them there with truth. How very Nazi. Abrahism is Semitism, the cult of submission and irresponsibility. Semitism is Semitism, and Christianity is Semitic. Every man equal at the bottom, so bring them there with lies. Christianity is a disease. It's a religion of women, immigrants, and slaves, not heroes, that we have nearly recovered from, and Christians are why we are vulnerable to their allies in Judaism and Islam. Now, let me explain something. Even when I was practically an atheist and pretty much certainly a Zen agnostic at best, I recognized, and you don't have to believe me because it's in writing in my book, The Face on Mars, I recognized that monotheistic religion, in other words Christianity, created the modern world. Now, I knew this when I was essentially nowhere near a Christian and had no intention of becoming one in any way, shape, or form. Because it's obvious if you're able to face the truth, like this cretinous incel obviously can't. And as I got older, that only became more and more obvious, that everything pretty much that you have, the form of jurisprudence, the fact that, it's a high trust society. In a Catholic society, you can leave your doors open and you probably will never get broken into ever. And if you do, the people in your community, because they're Catholics, will, catch the guy who does it because he'll be such an outlier. So in a proper Catholic society, it's a high trust society with lots of kids, continuous generation of people, and under the feudal system of city-states, which I still think is probably the most humane and workable system for humanity at large, which is when you go beyond the city-state, it sort of becomes a bit unruly, and we've got many examples of this. The city-states of Europe throughout what has become Italy since were successful things. That's where the Renaissance was born. That's where most of the big cathedrals and extremely high quality works of art, science, and so on was invented, done, and performed. So it's absolutely obvious to anyone who is not a rage-filled wanker, and I mean that in absolutely dialectic terms. These people have got calluses on both hands, and and as an additional point, this guy has as his on his profile, his relationship status is it's complicated, and I'm sure it is, because he's such an expert wanker. I think there's a conflict between his right and his left hand. Yeah, and which brings me to non-Christians, because yes, the alt-retards are a special form of non-Christians, and they really are special. The ignorance and stupidity of these people, and again, it's incidental because apparently, I think again one of the latest blog posts that Vox has put up, I read his blog pretty regularly, is about something to do with Richard Spencer and how he's just an irrelevant fake right-wing guy, and yeah, they are a very special breed. But even when I wasn't a Christian, even when I was an atheist, it was absolutely obvious to me that the Christian religion, and keep in mind that I didn't really know what the Christian religion was. I only knew what the Novus Ordo religion of Christianity was. It was absolutely clear, even back then, if I'd spent much time thinking about it, I interacted with one Jehovah's Witness that was actually a really good guy. And I sort of thought, well, from what he told me of the Jehovah's Witness beliefs, I couldn't, it made no fucking sense to me. It seemed completely absurd. And I still think that the Jehovah's Witnesses are completely absurd. But that was the closest I came to a decent sort of real Christian. The rest are all churchians, and most of them of a Protestant denomination. So, it's not surprising that they didn't make any sense. Now, it is absolutely true that Christianity is a civilizational pillar of Western civilization, as in, Vox, I think, mentions it's the Greco-Roman philosophical background, the European nations, and Christianity. And I understand, remember, I'm a paradoxical thinker, I'm not a binary thinker. So when I say, for example, flat earthers are idiots, and they are on that aspect. But, I also say I love Owen. I don't know if Owen is actually completely a flat earther. He talks about a realm and whatever. But, Owen is absolutely wrong about the moon and the earth not being globes. He's completely wrong about that. I don't love the guy any less. I wish he would actually take the time to test the nonsense that he believes. But I understand why he believes that way. I understand why he questions everything. And, he's honest. When eventually he realizes that he fucked up, he'll own up to it, like he has in the past about other things that he fucked up on. So just because a guy believes the earth is flat doesn't mean he can't be my friend or that I can't care about him or anything like that. When you are an alt-retard, I'm sorry, but that for me crosses the line, because you really are just too fucking stupid and too wrong about all sorts of things that actually matter in life for me to have anything to do with you. You are literally too stupid. Now, when it comes to non-Catholics, it's a finer line, because they are Christians. Vox is a Christian, Owen is a Christian, but they're still mistaken. But we're all mistaken. Again, keep in mind, I'm not a binary thinker. I'm just trying to say, look, man, if you're my friend, I'd like you to try and be as close as possible to the truth. And if you start out being a Protestant, you're already way off, right? And I've explained this before, why and so on. I've even drawn sketches similar to this sort of thing. So there you go. But the thing is, they're also mistaken when they say that, oh, all that matters is for you to be a generic Christian, and that's fine. Look, it's better if you're a generic Christian than if you're not. But ultimately, what has created Western civilization is not Protestantism. The fruits of Protestantism are the collapse of Christianity. It took a long time because, Christianity is a strong thing, and it was a very strong development in the world, as it would be, because it is God commanded and God chosen. So it's going to be efficacious, obviously. But Protestantism is really the degradation of Christianity and Catholicism. Again, for those Protestants that are railing right now, but you had indulgences that were being abused and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I've already said this. Nobody's clean, nobody's perfect. And the Catholic Church certainly had abuses in it and, abusive priests and frauds and so on, no doubt. But that, again, it doesn't mean that because, I don't know, your car door suddenly doesn't lock anymore, so you abandon the whole car. No. You fix the door. That's what you do. You don't suddenly revert to cart and horse and then start walking and then try to invent a 3-wheel bicycle that only works with one wheel. That's Protestantism for you. It doesn't work. And we can see the fruits of Protestantism. Which is the biggest Protestant country on the planet? America. What does America produce? What does America export? Ideology. What kind of ideology? Transgenderism, feminism, Hollywood values. That's what America exports far more than anything else. And what does it do around the world? It starts wars to grab the oil. It's grabbler behavior. The United States is controlled by grabblers, and I figured this out many, many, many years ago when I couldn't care less about ethnicity of people or anything like that. But I figured it out from very simple, basic facts. It's like, the people who started America were all Freemasons. They were funded by the French Revolution in large part. And almost all American men at some point started to become a thing that you've got to snip the tip of your dick off. Why? You're not supposed to be Jewish. So what's going on there? See, there's a whole subversion that happened, and if you're missing the tip of your dick, I understand that this is very traumatic for you, and it's very upsetting. I would certainly be very upset if somebody stole the tip of my dick when I was a baby under false pretenses and I didn't know what it was. I'd be fucking angry about it, no doubt. But that's what happened, and it's pretty clear. What does America export? What is the net good that America does in the world? Now, if you're American and you're getting offended, get in line. Just wait until I talk about the Polish people and how fucking dumb they are. But, at least they're relatively harmless because they're so stupid they don't really achieve very much. Or, the gayness of the French. I can go through all the nations, including the Italians, don't worry. And even the Venetians, because, as a good Venetian, we hate everybody, pretty much. Even our neighbors. Sometimes our neighbor more than anybody else, depending on the neighbor. So, yeah. Get all offended if you're American, but the reality is that your country exports fuck all other than wrong thinking. I really mean that. It actually exports wrong think, real wrong think. That's mostly what it does. And if you're American and you think, this is the best country in the world, really? What's so great about it? I've visited America on multiple occasions, and I was always very happy to leave. There is... Don't get me wrong. I don't particularly hate the American people. The average American is ignorant, but very friendly and very welcoming. Very superficial as well. And, but that's related to the ignorance. The average American can't read a paragraph in a newspaper and repeat it back to you in his own words in a way that makes sense. Neither can the average African, for that matter. But you take the average Japanese, and he definitely can. You take the average Italian of 30 years ago, and he definitely could. You take the average Italian now, and he can't either. He'll do a better job than the average American, but, not that much better. And why? That's because all the Italians have been brainwashed by the American exports. They watch American TV, they watch American movies, they watch American ideology. They grow up with American values, in inverted commas. So that's the fruits of Protestantism. What's another big Protestant country? England. What does England export? Mind you, England still has royalty, still has the Queen, degraded as it is. And they still have, clinging to relatively old traditions. So there is more of a historical, traditional way of doing things that is quite a bit more resilient. It's a collapsed empire, of course, and it's in its death throes, I think, at this moment. But don't rule the English out yet, because they do have a fighting spirit. It's been buried for a long time, but those genes don't just disappear overnight. So I think there is some hope for the English people, as long as they grow their balls back, which unfortunately I've never thought very highly of the masculinity of English men for the most part. Their women have bigger balls than the men, for generically speaking, but there are exceptions here and there, and the old English gentleman is quite a valued character that I quite enjoy, although they're very rare and almost extinct, of course. So again, what created Western civilization? It is Catholics, it is Catholicism. Look at the difference between what is exported by North America, Protestant country, and South America. Now, it's true that all the South American countries are pretty much banana republics, rife corruption. However, the average South American, generally speaking, unless you're in Venezuela or some other hellhole like that, is actually quite happy. And as a country to live in, they're not, you might not have all the technological advantages that America has, but the human level, the human contact is a lot nicer, I would say, and quite a bit deeper. When I say deeper, I don't necessarily mean that it's profound, but it is more interesting, generally speaking, than the average sort of, if you have a casual acquaintance in America, they're generally not that interesting. If you have a casual acquaintance in Brazil or Argentina or probably even Colombia, they're more interesting. They're generically a little bit more entertaining. They have a little bit more of a life philosophy that's based in reality rather than completely abstract cretinity. And again, I'm not dissing on any specific nation. I dislike human beings pretty much on an equal basis, regardless of their nationality, skin color, and so on. I'm not a fan of human beings in general, but the thing is, if you look at the difference between your average Catholic conquered country and your average Protestant conquered country, generally speaking, the Catholic conquered countries are overall, on a human level, doing better. Not necessarily on an economical level, but let me tell you, if I had to choose between living in a large city in the United States or a large city in Brazil, I'll pick Brazil every time. And I'm not a huge fan of Brazil for a number of personal reasons, but there's no doubt about that. If you have never traveled outside of the United States, you can't relate to what I'm saying. So I accept that this is sort of beyond the scope of your experience, but I've traveled a lot. I've lived in several different countries. I've visited many more. And I'll tell you, I would rather live in a large city in Kazakhstan than in a large city in the United States. And if you haven't been to Kazakhstan, you won't understand that. If all you know of Kazakhstan is that Jewish guy Borat, and his nonsense, and you think that's Kazakhstan, well, you haven't got a clue. You don't know anything. Kazakh people are actually quite an interesting people. They're a proud people. They've got a lot of things that I quite like about them. Aside from the fact that their women are actually quite beautiful, but aside from that issue, which mattered to me to a certain extent at the time that I was living in, not living there, I was working there. but you know, I wasn't married, I was on my own and whatever. But that aside, I think, you know, their culture does have a value that I quite find, you know, interesting. Again, the Japanese people I find quite interesting and quite, I could probably live in Japan. I would be always thought of as an outsider, which is fine because I would be. But again, I might, it would allow me a level of freedom in Japan that, because I'm an outsider, that isn't generally allowed to the average Japanese. So there are advantages to being an outsider to a certain extent. Anyway, the point is, if you're going to be a Christian and if you want to be effective, you know, you've got a hard road in front of you, whichever denomination you are, think is best or whatever. But historically, the only one that has created a truly great civilization is Catholicism. You know, it's Catholics that created Western civilization. The Orthodox held on to essentially what they got by being Catholic originally. And they've kept their foothold on Christianity okay, through some, you know, dodgy little means that I'm not necessarily a fan of, but, you know, whatever. The Protestants haven't salvaged anything. You know, honestly, the Protestants have only created 40,000 schisms. Abortion, divorce, contraception, all that is all Protestant-based stuff. And they infect the world with their, very logical, very materialistic way of doing things. You know, your average American businessman is ruthless, even compared to the average English businessman, who are quite ruthless themselves. But the average American businessman is purely materialistic. It's purely about the bottom line, and, you know, human sort of stuff just doesn't get into it. And any kind of allowance, let's say, for human emotions, human sensibilities, human fragility that Americans come up with are, generally speaking, completely corrupt perversions of reality. So it's like, oh no, we have to be nice to the transgenders because they're poor transgenders. It's absolute fucking nonsense, right? And yeah, we have to be nice to the poor people in the Congo when you've got people starving in America and you've got homeless people in America. Why don't you look after your own first, you know? Why don't you look after the vets? Oh no, because they were warmongering. They're soldiers, you know. You can't really blame a soldier other than for being dumb for being a soldier. You know, if you're a soldier, you're stupid because you're doing other people's dirty work. But insofar as it goes, you're not necessarily an evil person. You know, you're following orders. And we all know who said that at their trials. I was just following orders. That's what a soldier is. There's a huge difference between a soldier and a warrior. Get that in your head. Yeah. A fighter can be like a soldier or like a warrior. You know, a fighter is kind of neutral. Again, sometimes using Dungeons and Dragons terms is useful. The old original Dungeons and Dragons, Rule Cyclopedia. Not even the advanced D&D, which I played a lot of. No. Certainly not even the second edition and nothing beyond that. We're really talking about the original Dungeons and Dragons, you know. The difference between a fighter, a knight, and a paladin is pretty much the differences between a fighter, a soldier, and a warrior. So, a fighter is just a guy who's good at fighting. He could be good, bad, or something in between. Chaotic, lawful, or neutral. Yeah, the three alignments. A knight, generally a knight has to be lawful at least to the extent that he follows the rules of his order. But he could still be a bad guy or a good guy or something in between. But he's a more disciplined person, a more limited and regulated person. And that's the difference between a fighter, like a street fighter, say, or a boxer, that kind of a guy, you know, or a mixed martial arts guy who that's what he does for a living, and a soldier. The mixed martial arts guy, you know, he's got to follow rules in certain situations. The street fighter, there's rules he follows, which are, you know, street rules, depending on his little clan, tribe, or thugs that he hangs out with. They've got their own rules. but they're a lot looser than what a soldier has to follow. If a soldier doesn't follow the rules, not anymore because nobody cares now, but in the old days, if a soldier didn't follow the rules, he would get shot for it. He would be tried and executed. So soldier has got more strict rules. The same with fighter, knight, and then you get paladin. Now paladin has got very strict rules, and paladin is kind of a warrior, but those rules are kind of self-imposed by the choice of the fact that you are Christian, Catholic, say. And so as a Catholic, you don't go out, murder, rape, and kill, steal from other people. All the stuff that knights and fighters can do, you're limited from that. On the other hand, you do get special powers, and you do get special powers, because if you are a good Catholic warrior, you will gain the respect of your community, of your peers, of your friends, even of your enemies, because people will be able to rely on you. Your word is your bond, and once your word is your bond, and not because of your own internal strength or whatever, but because you have not just your own internal strength, but you have an external higher power that gives you even deeper strength, well, there you can start to really create communities, civilizations, and so on. And you don't get that with Protestantism ultimately, because Protestantism is a bastardized, corrupt form of true paladinhood. To a certain extent, you could equate the Protestants with the Dark Knights or the Dark Paladins, the Avengers. I think it was a special class that got created in the later versions of Dungeons and Dragons, because they also have these rules, but they're basically evil. And they're not necessarily evil in a direct, kill all the women and children, but the way they were, it was quite clever the way this character had been defined. I think they're called the Avengers, but they're evil in a subtle way. They're evil in a kind of twisted little way where they pretend to be this huge knight, and then they'll get the princess to marry them and whatever, and then they'll sell her off into slavery once they're away from the king and in a different land. That sort of underhanded, the gamma pretending to be a knight, that sort of a thing. And to a certain extent, Protestantism is that. And again, there are obviously individual exceptions and so on, but as a communal thing, as a community thing. And now you're saying, well, but there's only a remnant of you Catholics left. Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true. But would you rather be a small part of something true and good, or a small part of something completely corrupt, twisted, and lost anyways? I don't care if I'm the last guy standing. I don't care if I'm the last Christian standing. I'm not worried about that. I know what the truth is, and I'm following the truth as best I can, and I know that it'll all be okay in the end. I know who wins. So anyway, that's kind of my rant about the alt-retards, the flat earthers, and the non-Christians, and then if you want to go deeper into that, the non-Catholics. So I know I've been a little bit slack. Well, not slack, but I've just been busy. I haven't done as many videos. I'm going to try and correct that. So if you've got suggestions or questions or whatever, just fire them, because it might spark me off on doing some other videos. There are topics I want to cover, but I want to try and do more regular, even if perhaps shorter videos. So let me know what you want to hear, and I'll see if I can't provide it. Okay, good night.